Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, and we are really excited for our guest today. Before I introduce our guest, I first want to give a shout out to head coach Megan Olson of Medford High Girls Lacrosse for the team gear they sent this way. Megan's a great coach, and I'm excited for her season to get started, hopefully when it does. But our guest today, just a tremendous basketball coach, doing my homework over the last month or so of basketball coaches. I kind of kept this coach for last because of all the research I've done. So I'm going to turn to my notes here because there is a lot to introduce this coach with. 21st year as the head basketball coach at Scituate High School. Earned over 300 victories and did that just last January. 2008 Boston Globe Division III Coach of the Year, the 2008 Mass Basketball Coaches Association Division III Coach of the Year, the 2013 Mass Basketball Coaches Division II Coach of the Year, the 2018-2019, it's called the Board 54 IAABO, which Paul Sargent Award, which if you guys are listening a few weeks back, we had Coach Matt Freeman on from Braintree Girls Basketball, who actually has also won that award. So pretty cool to have somebody else who's actually won the same exact award. And then was the 2020 Mass Basketball Coaches Association, got entered in for his 300 victory in high school basketball. Just an amazing resume and an exciting episode I have on today. So ladies and gentlemen, we have been navigating the world of basketball now for over a month. So I am excited to kind of finish it off here with our guest today from Scituate High School, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Poirier.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I've done my homework on you and just, I think you have a tremendous resume and a really good story to tell. So, the same question that I jump in with most of our guests here is just simply, how did you get your start into coaching in high school basketball?
Just something that I kind of just knew that I was going to do. I had an amazing experience. I was a postgrad. I had this a circuitous way. I had a coaching experience while I was a postgrad at Anna Maria College. That there was a JV team that I played varsity basketball for Paul Phillips at Anna Maria College in Paxton, Massachusetts, about 1,000 years ago. But they had a JV team one year that there was an opportunity after my varsity season was over, coach their JV team in a couple of games. And I loved that opportunity, just made me recognize that's what I wanted to do. And I was lucky enough to be an assistant coach with a great coach named Mike Lammy at a place called Medeiros Hall. And then I went on to being an assistant at BC High with Coach Jerry Corcoran. And I'm laughing because we had a heck of a year there. It was only 1 year though. And then I ended up over at Scituate, which was where I graduated from, where I played in high school. But I always just knew that was what I was going to do.
Yeah. And what's impressive is like, I love having guests on that, like, kind of go back to the high school that they went to themselves. So, you had some years of experience of outside of Scituate basketball to see other coaches and to see how other programs are ran. And now you come to Scituate. So, I know you were an assistant coach there for a few years before you became the head coach, but talk about, for coaches out there, what was your biggest transition that you can remember from being an assistant coach to now being the head coach, that you were kind of like, wow, this is a lot more work than being an assistant coach.
It really was. I took it for granted that just the everyday routine. You can delegate, and you should delegate, but there are things that you have to own, and you have to create the culture every day. And I always liken it to breathing air into a deflated ball that's got a hole in it. Because the second that you stop inflating the ball, you have to give that energy. That's what a head coach does. And it has to always, it may be only a 4-month season, but it's a 12-month of the year job. And it's the culture, that you just try to keep building and maintaining. Because you would think, Anthony, this, that you would think when you have success, that you would think that when you have the examples of people that pursued excellence and teams that were just awesome, you would think it would perpetuate itself. You would think that kids would follow suit. And if you don't continue to keep air going into that ball. It will deflate as fast as it got inflated. And that
Yeah.
was the one I recognized right away from when I became a head coach.
Yeah, and like you said, and I think you said it perfectly, it's a 4 month a year, sport that requires 12 months a year of service. So, you're
Yeah.
doing a lot in the off season, you're doing a lot in season, so on and so forth. And you brought up your style. So I'm just going to jump into this because I pulled a quote out from the paper that talked about your practice style a little bit. I'm just going to read it and then want to get your feedback into explaining more because I loved it. I mean, I kind of got juiced up, when I read it. So again, it says, people here understand that our practices have never changed. They're hard. But I know all the great programs in this area have hard practices. The game is relatively easy compared to practices. So I ask you, talk about that. Talk what you mean by that, Coach.
It just games. I mean, it just practices mean so much because it has to be exactly what you want to have done successfully in the game. They go right hand in hand. And the harder practice can be and the faster it can be, the more the game slows down and the actual game slows down and the more easy that it is. And I knew that, and I that was part of what I always understood as a player. I had here and there, you would have a coach that would be take it easy on you, and it punished you for it. And pounding away in a practice floor makes the game so much easier. And I love that part is not fun. Like, that's the thing I try to tell families and kids about the game, is that the work of it isn't really fun, but this, man, like going in a locker room after beating somebody that you shouldn't have beaten, and how great it feels to be a team that just beat someone better than you because of the practices and the sacrifices and the sweat. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. People don't get that.
Yeah, and that's it, right? Because you see that great product on the field, and you don't realize, or people don't realize that are sitting in the stands, that it's the work that you're putting into it when none of them are in the stands is what's making you that good, right? So practice is everything, because you can shoot a million basketballs, you can do a million defensive drills, but at the end of the day, you can't do any mental toughness drills. And the only mental toughness drills you can do is simulate in practice and the intensity that there would be in a game. So I'm with you, Coach. And just to kind of, build off of that, in your coaching career, now I won't count COVID year because COVID year is just crazy year, but in the first 20 years of your career, you have made the playoffs at Scituate High School 19 out of 20 times. That's consistency, Coach. That goes back to what you talked about about practice and what your style is and how you get the kids ready. It shows on the court with consistency. 19 out of 20 is like Bill Belichick-esque, Coach, at the high school basketball world. Talk to me a little bit about, how you feel when you hear something like that your program is consistent every year.
And I'll always tell this to people, and they won't understand it. That year we didn't make it, that's the best coaching I have ever done. That was the best coaching I've ever done. I feel like I have fallen short on getting that team to be competitive. I have to go with what my community gives me. I can't go out and get someone who can face up and dunk and play. I can't do that. And getting teams to be competitive and making the state tournament every year, besides that year, has been really a hard effort. It's a great goal to have. Really, it's been a great goal, but that one year bothers me because I really felt like, wow, I tell you, Anthony, man, that team couldn't shoot. It couldn't throw the ball into the ocean from the Love Boat promenade deck, man. It just couldn't shoot, but it had heart and it played hard. Proud of that team, just like I've been proud of all my teams, but that one year I would have loved to have been able to help it more, to get more wins. But all through the process, consistency is what I really am trying for, and it's so hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Because graduation kills you. Because once you get people acculturated and they're comfortable with a system, because we have a system, they graduate and you start the process again.
Yeah, and for some kids, that system clicks, a little bit later than other kids, right? And some
Amen.
kids, you might see it
Amen.
halfway through their senior year, it starts clicking, and you're like, oh, I wish I had one more year with this kid in the system under me. They're finally starting to get it. So I'm gonna keep building off this word consistency. I love the word that you use, consistency, because we've talked about your practice style. We talked about 19 out of 20 years making the state tournament. Now I'm gonna read, statistically, you guys are in the Patriot League. So again, not counting this year, counting your first 20 years up until last year, you have won that league 10 years out of 20. So building off of that consistency we're talking about with, you have a system, you practice a certain system, you practice a certain way, you made the state tournament as a result of it, but also in the league you win. I mean, that's 50%, coach. You won your league 50% of the time. Talk about again, just how you've been able to do that in such a tough league. I mean, let's not underplay the Patriot League either. I mean, I've had a few coaches that I've had on here that have either been in the Patriot League themselves or have talked about the Patriot League. I know it's not an easy league to be playing in.
People, I think, underestimate it. I mean, there are there are good teams in it, and the one thing that I will say, and this is meant no disrespect to my league, and I think my fellow coaches in my league would understand it. And I think they have a similar view. Our goal is to get into the state tournament. Whether we not we win a state, whether we win a league championship, it'll take care of itself. It's not like that's not what we put our hat up on. If we win that, that's awesome. We love it. It's great. But that's not the goal we want. We have had a state championship elude us here, and we're trying to work on that still. We have ways to go to get to that. League championships take care of themselves. Making the state tournament doesn't. And getting into the state tournament and getting home games, that's the goal, because that's the springboard into later rounds. And the league championships are wonderful, and it is a tough league. But the teams in our league, that's a great goal and it's a great achievement, but it's not the end all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, in looking at it, coach, right? You could say that winning the league gets you those 10 games to get into the state tournament. So like, again, you're looking at it as kind of like, hey, the league is the league, state's the state. But at the end of the day, if you win your league games, it's going to take care of you getting to your bigger goal. So winning the league is just a bonus, right?
Yeah.
But it's not easy to win 10, coach. So,
Oh.
and you seem like a pretty modest guy from talking to you with our pre-phone interview and talking to you now, but that's a big notch on your belt to play in a tough league and to, be consistently in it. If you're not winning it, you're one of the teams that's in it to win it. So, hats off to you in that accomplishment. Again, I'm going to focus on the word consistency. So I want to take a look at a 4-year run that you guys had, specifically from 2006 to 2009. I'm just going to read off both your overall record as well as your league record, just to put in the perspective for the audience to hear. 2006-7 season, you were 21-3 overall. You were 7-1 in the league. 2007-2008, 23-3 overall, 6-1 in the league. And again, I got these off Max Prep, so the league numbers could be a little bit off. And in that year, you were the 2008 Eastern Mass Division III champs and the 2008 South Sectional champions in Division III as well. So both of those, right? 2008-2009 overall record was 20-4. League record was 8-3. You made the MIAA South Sectional championship. And then 2009-2010, 16-3. Your league record was 8-2. Coach, that is an 80-13 overall record over that span, as well as a 72. No, sorry, I'm reading the wrong numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 13, 23-5 record in your league. I mean, that's pretty impressive, Coach. Talk about that. Talk about just having that year of 4 years. You mentioned kind of having the players. I mean, talk about maybe some of the players that have come through your program in that span and so on.
We just had a cycle of, we had we had a lot of chicken to make the chicken salad. We really did. God bless the guys. And we had 2 brothers that were all like, we had a 6'10" and a 7-foot player. People just don't think that can happen in Massachusetts. Andrew and Sean McCarthy were 6'10" and 7 feet respectfully, and they were part of that team. I had a young man named Sam Malone who ended up winning an NCAA championship with Coach Poirier down in Kentucky, part of that cycle. We had a young man named Rodney Beldo that was an amazing player. And Dean Kennedy, a young man that was a two-sport athlete up at Rochester. He is now an assistant coach with the Gators down at the University of Florida football. We just had really devoted, hardworking players. And that, I mean, it wasn't, honestly, I would have had to work hard not to get a lot of those wins. I got out of the way more than anything. I always talk about it like, don't make me run, don't make me call plays. Come on, brothers, don't make me call plays. Because just go play basketball. And those years, the only reason how we did not win a state championship in that cycle, we got to the state championship game, and the one, believe it or not, we didn't shoot well. Those teams did not shoot well, but we could score. We could get to the foul line. We could make layups. We could have dunks. We had a lot of kids that could just play, but honestly, we didn't shoot well. And that's how we always were so close. And we lost to a team from Frontier who really was physical and well coached, and they beat us in the state championship in 2008. And I still think about it. I still watch the games. We've had some close runs to it, and those years were amazing. But there was talent. There was talent there. I would have had to really worked hard to mess with it, and it was so close. It was a great time, but wow, that just doesn't come around too many times.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing run. Hold on, my volume. It's an amazing run, and I think when you talk about it, you had mentioned to me that one of your biggest coaches that you looked up into the state was Bob Fisher. And I had his son Brian on here a few weeks back, and Brian had a similar 4-year run in which he went 74-13. Now you're talking about someone that you looked up to and somewhat idolized in the Massachusetts basketball world, and then obviously his son who was looked up to him, and so on and so forth. Talk about Bob Fisher for a second, just because I know you brought it up, and I'm sure you want to talk about it a little bit. So I want to give you the floor to do that.
It's just one of these human beings that is unique and could have been with Coach Calhoun on his runs at Northeastern and at Connecticut. I mean, he was one of these guys that has won a state championship in the early 1970s. And I was at my first, when I became the varsity coach, never forget it. He knew of me and I knew of him through just playing the game and growing up in the area. And all the coaches left the meeting, and he was there with me alone. And he talked to me, and I always tell coaches that every new coach should hear what he said. He said, you're going to polarize your community. You're going to be loved and you're going to be hated, and there's going to be stuff in between, but you're going to polarize things. And he said, plagiarize everything, because coaching is it's plagiarism, but just put your signature on it. And it was the best. And he always said, love your players, love your players, love your players. And he was, every person that's going into coaching should sit down and listen to Coach Fisher. There's a reason why he's got 500, 600 wins, won multiple state championships. And basketball has changed, because he's in his 70s now. He's 52, I think now. I think but he's in his 70s, and he's changed with the game. And not many people can do that. Like, I watched his game that he coached. He's the head coach at Marshfield now.
Yeah.
And I watched their game yesterday, and it was so much different and we competed against each other. When he was the head coach at Rockland, we had a rivalry. Situate's a little bit bigger than it used to be. We're a small Division II school, but we were Division III for a number of years.
Yeah.
And the rivalry that we had with Rockland was as intense a rivalry in a positive, good way than I have ever experienced. And I would say that, Anthony, if you could have a person on this show and a perfect person to talk to younger coaches, I find that he set me in the right course. And he does that for more. didn't do that for any other reason but because he's a good human and a great human being. Love Coach Fisher.
Yeah, it's funny. His son was absolutely amazing on here, and to have his son talk about him and said a lot of the same similar things. Just amazing. It's just really cool to see how connected the world of high school basketball is, whether it's girls or boys. Of how many coaches have coached with each other and know each other, and maybe been on the same staff before. So it's really cool. But I just wanted to give you that because I know you said some nice words to him about him on the phone. I wanted to obviously give you the stage to do that too here. Jumping back to you, I mean, again, let's talk about your impressive resume. Last year, you got 300 wins. And again, just doing a little research on you and looking in the paper, it was a quote that I think sums you up perfectly thus far in this podcast. And it says here, all the accolades belong to them, not me, referring to your players. 300 wins, coach, that's a lot of wins. It's a lot of seasons. Like you said, it's a lot of work. It's 12 months a year. It's a lot of grit. I mean, talk about when you accomplish that goal. 300 wins is a big time, number when it comes to wins in basketball. Talk a little bit about, that feeling of accomplishment.
I honestly thought I know that it's nice. That's what it is. It's a great milestone. It never influenced me more than, wow, that's great. Let's move on from it. I haven't made a layup in that time. I haven't taken a charge. It's been the brothers that have come through the program that have got those wins. And I know that some people can say that and it may not sound real, but I have never given. I found it a distraction more than anything because it's been their wins, not mine. Very proud of that because of the number of people that have come through sacrifice to be part of that. It's all part of, it's not me. And that's one thing Coach Fisher really made sure. He also explained to me, if it's ever about you, get out of the field. If it's about you, and I find those wins not about me. It's a great thing. It's nice. It's a nice little plaque. You can see it, but it's about the guys that made that happen, not me.
Yeah. And that's why I thought that quote summed you up perfectly. But you're absolutely right. But it is an accomplishment, coach, getting to that 300 and the work and grind that you put in. I know it. I get it. I've been there as far as coaching and know the work that goes into it. So it's a hats off to you. And it's a number that means longevity and consistency. And that's what's so important in coaching today. I mentioned earlier when I introduced you onto the show, I mentioned an award that you won that was one of the refereeing awards, the Paul Sargent Award. And I had a coach on here about a month back, Matt Freeman out of Braintree, coached at Bishop Feehan for a long time. He had won that award, I believe, the first year that it had come out. And ironically enough, Paul Sargent, I think his son, he was saying, is the vice principal at his current high school that he teaches at. So kind of a full circle there for him. But he said of his coaching career, that was the biggest accomplishment that he had received of all the awards and the coaches of the years and championships and league championships. He said that award might've been the most important award he's won in his career. So just kind of giving you a second to maybe talk about that and winning such a prestigious award and maybe how it affected you as a coach a little bit.
It really shocked me because I think that I've learned I've evolved in that, and I am a pain with referees. I will express what I think I'm seeing. But I had an experience one time where I had a referee that I really didn't want to see again. And I made a phone call to the league directors or whoever. And I said, I can't have that guy at one of my games again, blah, blah, blah. And that next spring, I went down to the Hanover U, and there were two huge national level EYBL Nike programs playing, future NBA guys. And this guy that I said couldn't be on my court, he was out there grinding, calling fouls, getting people going crazy. It was courageous what he was doing. Yeah. And I was embarrassed that who am I? Like, who am I to call up and say, that guy's got more guts in his hinky than I do in all of me. And that really changed my view of referees. And one thing too is that there is a camp that I work every summer that is directed by Coach Eddie Miller and Coach Bob Fisher at MVP at Bentley. One thing they make all the varsity guys do is referee a number of games. And getting that and being made to referee and seeing how difficult it is and the courage level of it. There's courage involved. You're not a soft guy if you're going out there. So I apologize. I really called up my league guy, the coordinator, and I said, what a horse's patootie I am. Please have this guy at every game. Anytime that guy wants to referee my game, I want him there. And I've been able to kind of come full circle a little bit. I admire our referees, and people should too. And the younger coaches, man, it's just the wrong alley to go down. They have no skin in the game. They just want to work hard. They want to do the right thing. Express yourself, but don't make it. I've made it personal, and I've learned not to. At least I'm trying to. But thank you for letting me talk about that, because it's a special award. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and as I said, I had Coach Freeman on, and Coach Freeman was, like I said, just very honored about it, and he spoke a little bit about it. So it's a great accomplishment, I think, when the referees recognize the coach that you are, and how you are with your team and the product that you put out there. I mean, it is a huge compliment, because they see many games, many coaches in many leagues and divisions. So again, tip of the cap to you, Coach. Awesome. So now I'm going to jump into like some of the fun stuff here. So we've been, I've been hearing your modest, your modest attitude about your accomplishments over the course of the podcast. I know that you guys practice really hard. You're pretty consistent. So talk about your practice style. Like, what is Coach's style on the court, off the court, how you interact with the kids? Like, what is your way of getting these kids motivated to play for you?
Well, it's a simple thing that I got taught, because I did not grow up I call Massachusetts and I call Scituate my home. I do. But I lived in a number of places, and particularly right outside of Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. And I got taught a different style of basketball culturally. And one of the things that I learned there, and I forgot kind of when I got up here for middle school and high school, like, you cross the lines, it's for real. And that was one thing that my college coach, Coach Paul Phillips, really made clear, is that you step over that line, you're a basketball guy. You got to go at it. You can be, everything else does not matter. This is the most important 90 to 2 hours you got. And you got to produce every day. And it's got to be fast. It's got to be fast. Everything's got to be fast. And in order for a game to slow down, you got to prepare to be as fast as possible. And that's the one thing about the practices. It's meant to be one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. I really worry when I watch youth programs. I see a lot of walking around. I see lines. I see kids without a ball in their hand. I mean, they're every second. You got about a 90-minute window with human beings when you get them on a basketball court or a football field or anything. And once that 90 minutes is really up, you can have a 3-hour practice if you want. It's got to be real, and it's got to be fast and intense. And when you step over that line, you got to be proud of what you just did. And you got to leave it there, though, too. I have to say that one of the things that my players have allowed me to do, which I really appreciate, is that when we come over those lines together, I'm back. I'm your coach still and all, but I'll do anything for you. I'll write a recommendation at 3 a.m, and if you need it, I will go and see a teacher if you need it. I'll make a phone call to get you a job. And that's the kind of the beauty of 25 years of coaching, is that, you go to the weddings. Hey, I've been to the funerals too. They recognize that they're part of something, and that I'm not just wanting basketball for them. I want them to apply all the lessons of that practice to their lives. And it's not just a bunch of words. Working hard is a skill. Learning to work hard and have a work ethic is a skill. And it worries me that that people think, oh, that growth mindset, oh, it's going to come one day. It's going to be there one day. No, it's not, unless you really work for it. And I believe in the growth mindset uh, aspect of education, and I know it can be applied to different. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's
No, I haven't.
and it's a great concept, but you've got to always be pressing the button. Like, when is it going to be in place? When are you going to have that work ethic? When are you going to have those skills? And the practice court is a perfect place, vehicle to teach you life skills. And I do believe in that. 100. My coaches demanded a ton from me, and so therefore I can ask a ton of them. And I like how the continuity of that.
Yeah, coach. And I think being an educator, I keep having an echo on my mic, so just ignore it if you hear it from your end. I don't know how to fix it. But hearing it from your end and both being educators, that's exactly what, I feel the same exact way. I think we're as coaches needing to teach these kids the skills that they need beyond the sport that they play, basketball, football, baseball, whatever. Work ethic, you're going to need that. Competitiveness, you're going to be going for jobs, so you always, when you're playing sports, are trying to put yourself at a better level to be able to succeed in your goal that you have. And that's what you're going to need in life too. When you go for jobs and, have your own family and make big decisions, you're going to need these experiences that make you understand what a work ethic is, make you understand what time management is, making them understand that you're a part of something that's bigger than you. I mean, those are the things that I think coaching, and great coaches in particular, do a great job of not only portraying in their program, but having a consistency on the product, on the court as well. So, I'm totally with you on that. And maybe that's because we're educators and that's just the kind of way we think at baseline, but you're absolutely right. If you're going to build something and do it for a long time, it needs to be consistent, and it starts with the leader. And if the leader's consistent, then everybody else following through will be the same exact thing. So,
And everybody, and this is, you need to compliment kids and you need to criticize kids. And there is a 50-50 golden ratio of, we all know that. But, these young folks are going to be criticized in their workplace. I'm amazed when I've been very blessed. I've been very blessed that I try to tell kids, like, you're going to have, like, I hear these stories and I don't get much of this. I really don't, Coach. That, I get a parent call me up about playing, all that stuff. I mean, like, your son is 18. Your son is 18 and you're calling me over. I mean, the very, 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 very few times that I've had that type of discussion, I feel like I'm smelling some rotten eggs. I'm like, this is not good.
yeah.
Does your son know you're here? Because if my dad did that, my mom did that, I'd be furious with them. Like, do you know what you're doing here? Like, I just don't have tolerance for that. And I've had players leave my program and be in combat within a calendar year. I think they're able to talk about their playing time with me, Dad, and Mom. I mean, are you kidding me? These are people that go on to really high levels of education. I think they're able to talk to me, Dad, about whether the sub pattern works for them or not. And you got to encourage your players to be young men. I'm not interested in having boys. Boys, they can stay at home. And being a young man means you speak for yourself. And not always, and tough discussions are just part of life. And playing time is earned. It's just, I mean, I don't even want to get on the subject because I don't have too much of that as I don't, because we talk about it all the time with players. It's part of their responsibility. And parents just do a great job being parents. Do that. But you know what? That job description doesn't have anything to do with you calling a coach about playing time. Where did you learn that? At the yacht club or something? In Entitlement City? Or where did you learn that? Like, I hear that from coaches, and it just takes away from the process.
Yeah, I won't get into
Sorry
that
to even
topic.
mention it.
No, I
Sorry
get
to
it.
even mention
Hey,
it.
you got to say it. So, and so, yeah. And listen, I think that if you run the tough practice style that you run, right, and kids are willing to go through it, knowing that they're not playing a lot, or they might be a guy who gets off the bench if a game's getting out of hand, and they're still coming there and grinding every day, then that speaks volumes about that kid and who they are. So that's, again, you're not only putting them through a program of, yes, playing a basketball game, but you're putting them through a program that's teaching them a lot more about who they are as people. And I think that that's equally as important as the product that you put on the court.
We do.
So talk a little bit about, in 2016 to 2020, I might be off a year or two, but you got to coach your son. You got
Oh,
to
well,
coach your son. So, doing the math, if you started in '01, I mean, your son was either just born or hasn't been born quite yet, or right around that time. So pretty much coaching through this program, your son has grown up in this program. So talk about the opportunity of, your son growing up in this program and then being able to kind of coach him, and maybe how that changed your relationship a little bit as far as, I don't know, expectations just in general.
yeah, he has grown up in this program. And I feel really blessed. My daughter, in a much lesser extent, but by her own choice. No, my son did. I mean, he would take naps on the sidelines when I was running shooting clinics. He was always in a gym. And um, I never made my son be a basketball guy, but he loves basketball. And he played for me for 4 years. And I'm laughing because he's at Lemoyne now, which is an NE10 school, and I miss him a ton. But he was able to come home. Their season was shut down, so he was with us quite a bit this year. And I didn't go into the coaching him blindly, and we talked about that on the radio. And I I tell people, if you're going to coach your son, do your homework. Don't go in it blindly. And I talked to a lot of different coaches who did it well. And I even found coaches who I knew didn't do it well. And I learned from them. And one of the things that we still laugh at is that in Scituate, there's a rotary on Route 3A. And anytime we were coming from a practice, even when he was a young kid in a youth level, I could be his coach all the way till we were on that rotary. And the second we were off it, I was his dad again. And we kept that balance. And my wife and I, Emily, have been blessed with beautiful people as children. Jack and Emma are beautiful. We're so lucky. And Jack just loved basketball, loved it, and he's playing on a pretty high level. And I didn't get him into it to get a scholarship, but he earned every second of it. Anthony, can I tell you one story that I experienced though?
Absolutely.
The one thing that I really struggled with his freshman year, I did not want to start him. He was one of four freshmen who made varsity, and it was deserved. But I didn't want to start him because he was a freshman, because freshmen they're young, and the game's physical. I just assumed he'd be trapped, he would get beat up, and I did not start him in our first varsity game. And I also was coming out that stress of having him that year. I had the second of and my last hospital trip. I had to run to the hospital and a stayover. I've had two. I thought I had a heart attack in 2007. I thought I was having a health issue based on basketball stress. I promised myself it wouldn't ever take place again. I won't ever make my body be that stressed out because of a game basketball. But he did not start his freshman game. In that game, that freshman year, as a varsity kid, he made four, as I remember, off the dribble, like really tough, beat someone off the dribble, step back shots. And when people are shooting that mid-range game, there's a lot of people that can spot up and take a set shot like you're in the barbecue and the driveway with your uncle and 4th of July kind of shooting. But this was real fast, off the dribble pull-ups. And he made four of them, and he scored 8 points that game. And a guy, father from the other team, somehow got my email and wrote me an email and said, I know that, having a freshman son, don't want to start him. But he wrote me and he said that if I ever go to a Scituate game and your son doesn't start, I'm not going to pay to go in. Your son needs to start. Your son shoots off the dribbles. And I really appreciated that email because I did. I started him after that point, and it was true. Jack outworked people. Jack outworked everybody. And he's still doing it. And basketball, I'm so glad that we had that time together. I miss them a ton. I do. I really do.
Yeah. And I think that's what's just like amazing, right? Because I got to experience this and I got to tell a few coaches this with, I coached with Serge Clavier, who coached at Untitled Catholic football for 30 years. And, 15 of the years I coached with him, his son was always on the sideline. So it was always interesting to see his son growing up. And, every year he took on a different role, from water boy to ball boy to keeping the charts. And, we went as through high school, he stayed with the team. And it was really cool to see. And listen, your son was a great player, 1,000-point scorer. He was a captain last year for your team. That was a real good team that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Just another question, just ask you as a mentality of a coach. You played in a tough league, and it seems like in your league you play anywhere between like 8 to maybe 10 games. So talk about booking your non-league games. Do you look stylistically at all? Maybe look at see what you typically see in your league, and that's how you book, or are you looking to book maybe divisions up, same division? I mean, what's your mentality with that, Coach?
It's interesting. It's more of trying to find people to play you. Find it. We are not. People do not. People want something easy in those non-leagues, and they don't exist. And we went into coach. We went into the a tournament in Boston last year. I can't think of the name of it. Oh my gosh, the BABC tournament, and it was held in Boston, and it was a guy in the stands. We went 1-on-1 in there. We lost to Everett, and I love the opportunity to go into there because people are like, Scituate, what are you doing here? And I'll play anyone that communicates with me, and it's not always easy to do. What I have found though is that there are schools that will contact me to play us that in their league they're so dominant they need to get beaten. They need an opportunity to play against someone fast, and that hasn't happened. But over the years, it has happened that people, hey, I know you play up tempo, and I need my team to experience that. So it is not easy to manage. It's not easy to manage, but you always try to make yourself better, and you got to throw yourself into the fire. You do, and that's what I think some of your league play is, a little bit of that, and some of it is making sure you get those 10 wins. So you try to balance that. It's not easy.
Yeah, and when you go into the playoffs, you're seeing who knows, right? So, it's good to kind of see competition that might be a little bit better, especially where you think you might have pretty good teams, to see, okay, let's see how good we really are. Let's play some of these bigger, faster, more physical teams than what we typically see in league play. Absolutely. Talk about the utilization of your bench a little bit. Obviously you seem like you're in pretty good shape the way that you practice and, stylistically and everything else. I mean, and most coaches I talk to, it seems like, it's your 7th or 8th guy off the bench. And then, some guys, dump and utilize their entire bench. I mean, how do you look at building a roster that's pretty consistent across the board?
I mean, what I experienced in college, you have a starting unit, you have a second unit, and you might even have a third unit. And that is your depth chart. And if the first and second units go at it every day, you can't, honestly, I don't think you can play the style I ask my teams to play, going 7 deep, going 8. I play 11 people all the time. And if there's foul trouble or injuries, I cannot believe in the past how many times that I have kept 18 kids on the varsity roster during the regular season. You can't keep it during the state tournament, but have had injuries or sickness take place, and kids that you would say, man, only an act of God will make this kid get in. And all of a sudden he's your first man off the bench. So you're always, and again, that 4 months of the year, that's all I get with these guys. Every chance I get to play as many people as I can and win the game. That's what it's about. But if you're battling each other every day, shouldn't that second unit be able to go in and spot you even? I don't want my second unit to just maintain a score. Certainly don't want it to lose a lead. But if you're battling every day against your first unit, it should be able to be competitive, play every game. And that's how I view it.
So when you're practicing, would you it's safe to say that are you working on yourselves more as a team during your practice that you seem like you kind of to minute what you're doing? How much is it, I guess, working on yourself versus it is preparing for that opponent the next game?
I'd say it's very much geared to the next opponent, but so much of it is what doesn't go on, building what doesn't go on in those 8 months. I always kind of I feel like it's makeup time all the time, trying to create chemistry, trying to create, and like those moments, like we had a key win a number of years ago where my son looked at the inbounder, looked at him, and their eyes spoke to exactly what, and it was so interesting to watch because I picked it up, that practicing in game situations in practices so that you can win games and create chemistry. And it was eye contact that made the backdoor cut work so well. And it was on a side out, and the other team just wasn't picking it up. And by having that type of culture in practice, it's supposed to translate and be applied to games. So I would say it's a good question. I mean, as much as you're maintaining skills and you're maintaining your individual stuff, it's all about team building, and it's all about winning that next game. Does
Yeah,
that
because
answer that?
yeah, and I think it does, because I come from the football world, right? So we have 1 week to prepare for an opponent versus you guys might
Mm.
be playing back to backs or every other night, or, you don't have a lot of time in between game to game. So, in football, we try to practice a lot of situational football, third and short situations, third and range, defensively, 4th and 1, sudden changes, like really same thing, kind of your idea of just really, making practice have a set schedule and we're moving quick and we're not just sitting around. There's not a lot of lag time that's going on. So, I totally get it. And I just always find it fascinating how other coaches, go about the game and how they coach. I mean, you have a 12-person bench with 5 people on the court to really deal with, right? In different sports, it might be more, it might be less. So it's always interesting to see that mentality of utilizing the entire talent, the entire roster that you have. Just talk about in general, like, you've had a lot of success. You've won a lot of league titles. Talk about the assistant coaches that you have with you,
Mm.
because that's pretty important. I mean, I know building a coaching staff, having trusted assistants who are there for the right reasons is what's really important. Teaching anybody the sport or how your system is and what you want them to coach, I think, is the easy part. But you can't change who the person is that's coming into your program. So talk about what you look for. Have you had longevity on your staff? I mean, what goes into a coaching staff for Scituate basketball?
We've had a considerable longevity, um, that is just, I don't I always laugh at it, like I can't call them assistants. I can't do it because they're on their own right, they're capable of being head coaches. I don't hire anyone. I will hire like an assistant to an assistant. I will that that's the person that you can teach the game to. But if you're gonna be our freshman coach, you're going to be the JV coach. You're going to be a varsity assistant defensive coordinator. I need a head coach. I don't need a guy that I need or a young lady because we actually had a young lady with us last year. Um, I need someone who knows the game, who can add to what we're doing. Um, I don't need to be teaching them. And that's how lucky I've been. This year, because of COVID, we lost Doug Kirby to just couldn't come back due to COVID and just being really careful about not getting it, and really took away from. But again, we didn't have any practices, so he would became very valuable defensively for us. I have a coach named Coach Jordan who has been with us again this about over 16, almost 16 years, and Coach just brings unbelievable energy every day. Coach Mahiri, our freshman coach, I don't hold it against him that he's originally from Tennessee, but he's it's just so great to have like-minded people who are willing to work their tails off and understand that that's what you do, not expect to get a pat on the back for doing what you don't get patted on the back if you cover your mouth when you sneeze. Everybody works, everybody contributes, and everybody's honored. And it, as the head coach, and I always have to say this at times, like my coaches sometimes when they have ideas, and I say, you know what, that's a great idea. I ain't going with it. I ain't going with it. And that's the hard part of telling them, you know, it's not a disrespectful thing. I love what you're saying, but I have to be the one that makes that decision. And my coaches are, my fellow coaches have been really good understanding that not everything that they want to see is that I'll do, but it's always appreciated. It's always so appreciated. Been blessed with their friendship and their patience, and we're all crazy together. Your coach, your coaches are crazy. You don't mean to be, but you're crazy. How do our wives handle us, man? I mean, I don't know how that works. My wife is listening to me right now, but God, we're crazy. Yeah. It's a crazy business. It's a great business, but it's crazy.
Yeah,
The
there's just a
energy.
lot to it.
Yeah,
And
there's a
like you said,
lot to
it's
it.
12 months a year. I mean, people who say it's not, they're lying. And you're constantly, evaluating talent, keeping eyes on players, maybe coaching in other leagues, going to see games, maybe seeing some
Mm.
youth games. And, that kind of alludes me to my next point is youth program. I mean, to have consistency and longevity at the level that you have for over 20 years and having players that come through the system that, just has been a very successful system. Talk about your contributions or the work that you do with the youth program in Scituate to get these kids ready for that, that varsity or that freshman JV varsity experience when they come to high school.
I just beg the coaches to, hey, I'm, they're not getting paid for it, but if you're gonna be coaching kids who have aspirations to play at our high school, they got to know the system as early as they possibly can. And that kind of intimidates a lot of people that are doing it just because someone needs to do it. And I really appreciate their efforts. I love that I see a lot of these guys and gals that coached youth on the youth level, going to games, welcome me to practice. Like our coaching staff will be there. You ask us to go to a practice, we're there. We're there. We want the kids to come and see us play. And I have a recreation. I work for the Scituate Recreation throughout the summers for about 1,000 years. I have a summer camp that is, Coach, it's hard. It's straight up hard. Basketball, getting good at anything is hard. We have a lot of fun. We do a lot of, but we work it. And I beg that those youth programs keep getting kids that are willing to recognize that anything worth achieving in life takes enthusiasm and takes effort, and nothing is given for free. And if we can keep that up, I really appreciate the youth programs, but I am very available to them. I think sometimes they're like, oh God, here he comes, oh my God. But if you have a kid that you've coached for 5 years and they walk into high school and they can't talk when they play, you've done something wrong. You've done something wrong. When a ball hits off a rim and you have to go get it and you don't, there's something, those are not complicated concepts. I'm not worried about you running the Princeton offense. I am worried about that you have kids that are under your tutelage that have to talk when they play, have to sprint to the ball. They have to play with pace and space. You have to be able to instill that. And if you don't, gosh, go get somebody else who will. And I appreciate they do try. That's all you can ever ask. But if you coach kids, they should be able to talk. You have to be able to communicate to be successful in any sport. I don't care what it is. Youth stuff is so important.
Yeah. And again, I think that kind of goes to us being educators, right? We look at it and we look at the value of being involved in kids' lives at a young age, for them to recognize your face and to understand that you're the varsity basketball coach and this is what they're working hard to eventually get to. I think that that's awesome that you have your foot in it or your hands in it, or at least having people's ears to hear what it is systematically. I mean, coaching football at Arlington Catholic, that was the one disadvantage I felt like we have. And for coaches out there, it's such an advantage that if you have a youth program to be a part of it, it, be a part of it. Because I get kids that come in and, know they're coming from different cities or towns, which can be great, but some of them, you don't know what they've learned, if they've ever played before. There's a lot to figure out early on. And like you said, most great teams and what you do is really try to get that group together. So getting that at an early age is just such an advantage. Now, talking about that and being involved in the youth program for so long and these kids recognizing who you are, how do you and your coaches, since you have longevity on your staff, how do you evaluate leadership and captains? How do you go about that process? Because I've heard so many great things. When I was coaching, I was watching all sorts of YouTube videos and looking up how different colleges and different places did this, leadership councils or captains. And, it's always interesting to hear how different programs, and where you've had success for so long, I'm really interested in just how you go about choosing leaders for your program.
It's always it's not always an easy process, because leaders are not born, they're made. And there are kids that, you got to get people who will first and foremost be the example. And they don't have to necessarily be your best athlete, your best basketball guy, but somebody who's there all the time and works their tail off. Has to start that way. As far as the basketball end, they got to be a good son. They got to be good sons. They got to be good citizens. You got to be those two. And, the athletics probably does come forth. You have to be doing your job in the school. You cannot be a pain in the behind in school and be a captain. And basketball down the road, those things though about being a good son, being a good citizen, being a good student, that's what you're here to do. The basketball's last, but those things, if those three things are in place, that fourth one usually will follow suit. It's a tough thing. I've had very good captains, and I've had captains that haven't been that good. It's that example piece, and to know that little kids are watching you. On our basketballs, we have, and it's not anything that we share with everybody, but if you look at our basketballs, our practice game basketballs, there are 2 dots that we keep on the basketballs, and they're representing eyes. And we tell our guys that those eyes are little kids. They're looking at you. And if you're acting like a donkey somewhere around town, that's not helping that little kid. They'll know who you are. Like, we are a small community and people talk, and those eyes matter. And we make a big deal of that within our not many people, Anthony, would even know anything what I just said. It's kind of like in-house, and it matters what little kids see. And that's the beauty of what I really saw with my captains, particularly as late. They know little kids are watching them.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty powerful stuff, Coach. I mean, think about it. And I know exactly what you're talking about, because part of, as they say with Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And that's what those kids have when they're captains. Like, I think it's so cool, small town, when little kids are coming to the games and they're wearing the jerseys and they're proud to see the high school kids, because I want to be like number 3. I want to be like number 12. I want to be like the point guard. Like, that's what those kids look at. And whether the players, they're mature enough, and again, you're creating young men, as you say, to understand that power is great that they have, and to see that those little kids someday want to be them. It might be over their head right now as far as high school kids, but the ones that are really disciplined, and especially where you said finding leadership, those are the ones that get it. And when they start showing it, then it's that trickle down effect onto the rest of your team. So no, your message is loud and clear, Coach. I totally get it.
That hazing thing really bothers me, because that kind of stuff, like all the stuff that we have to do in schools, that we have to talk about, like that stuff, that should be taken care of by moms and dads and guardians, but the fact that we have to talk about hazing, like, who didn't raise you right, like, that's a reflection of your upbringing. And one of the things that we never take it for granted that it won't happen. You know what I mean? It is good that the state says, hey, read this, because what I really have seen is that when we get a cycle of freshmen who are treated with respect, who are treated correctly, they better sure as heck be good to the freshmen when they're seniors, or they're cowards, or they're straight up cowards. If you're going to be different, if you were treated well and you don't treat people well, you're a coward. That word needs to be used more by us, you know. And I have really, that captain and leadership, it's really about just how you just deport yourself and how you behave, but really how do you treat people that people don't see how you treat them. You know, are you respectful? Are you doing the right thing? And hopefully that's a thing that, again, that you can't take it for granted year to year to year, that they're gonna be good people. You just gotta keep working at that.
Yeah. And I think it's a great message, Coach. And I think that you just do a great, I mean, again, the word is consistency. We've been using this entire podcast. Everything that you're saying all falls back to the word consistency, because everything that you're talking about has made this program what it is. And whether you want to give yourself all the credit in the world for it or give it to all the players, regardless, there's a system in place. You're the person who's in charge of running the system, and the players are in charge of, maintaining it. Right. And that's great. That's great for you. That's great for your program. That's great for the town. The game of basketball has changed so much. And I talk to this about all the coaches that we come on. But the one thing that impresses me a little bit, and, I've been trying to stream some high school basketball games and obviously watching college basketball when I can. Obviously, the game has changed with the three-pointer. We all know that. But the ball movement is very quick, too. Talk about how you educate yourself as a coach as the game changes. I mean, how do you practice making quick decisions and moving the ball really quick in, say, a basketball practice, for it to be that, consistent and good?
By creating situations that you have to be making quick decisions and moving the ball quick. You have to create situations that you want the outcome to be exactly what you're trying to get through in practice in a game situation. Only by creating game situations and being fast can you be fast. I've always believed that, like, that ball movement is evidence of your brain moving, your IQ. The more ball movement that I see, the smarter the team I think is going down. I mean, what smarter teams know that, and I love the way the game is played now. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I don't, the hard part for me really is that I don't always get the same athlete in year out. And I need the youth programs to know I ain't changing a thing. It's going to demand this when you're up at the high school. So you better plan ahead, and creating situations like that ball movement in particular. I think that's what happens when you've got smart kids who know how to play. And I see it. I see ball movement now that you would have never seen 5 years, even 5 years ago. It's fun. I love ball reversals. I love when the ball can get reversed from one side to another, and I like the action that can take place on those catches. Like, it's just an exciting, fun game. The high school level, we did not win every game we played this year, but man, the ball movement was really, really good. I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, and I think that that's all part of the making the game faster, right? And it's so pretty to watch. And just the high school, I was like, geez, these kids make quick decisions with the basketball, and they always make that extra pass that someone is wide open that you might not necessarily see when you're watching it on the screen or on the TV. That you're just like, wow. I mean, what great vision, what great ball movement. You talked about this year, so we'll jump into it. COVID. I mean, just every city and town's different on how they handle it. Every league is different on how they're handling it. I mean, talk about you navigating through a COVID situation in basketball. I mean, I've heard of schools that have shut down seasons, into it, to some seasons not even starting, to some people playing a pretty good amount of games. So, where did you guys fall in that category of things?
We started late like everybody else. Really, I thought we had an amazing 2 weeks of practicing, and won our first game, played great, and we shut down for 17 days. 17 days. And it was really, I really admire my group. There was a nice article written about what we were doing to try to keep the season alive and keep kids engaged. Shooting competitions, foul shooting, time miles, strength training, all that stuff. But we had 17 straight days and then came right back to playing. We didn't have a practice. We just went from not playing in 17 days and then playing. And after that, it was makeup game after makeup game. And one of my better players I really think that led to him being hurt. And no complaint, I mean, not blaming anybody, but I'm so happy we had the season though. I really was, any day I thought we were going to get shut down. And my community needed to shut down when they did. They really did. It was an entire community shut down, not just the high school, but it was painful that 17 days because I liked where we were. And honestly, we never were able to get back to particularly situational. Like we came back and we played so many games so quickly without any preparation, without anything. And we lost like in last minute, like an overtime game that I think if we were practicing, we would have at least had something more concise to run, something more situational that we would have worked on a million times. But at the end of the day, I am so happy that my seniors got to play. I really thought we were done. I did not think it was going to be even an opportunity. And I know a lot of kids that just aren't playing. But it's so strange that the only thing that I was like questioning, Anthony, was like the situation that my town was in, we shut everything down. And the same situation would take place somewhere else and they wouldn't shut down. That drove me nuts, but that's town for town and everybody does it differently. But at the end of the day, I am so pleased that they got something. They did.
And I think a lot of that is, again, sorry for my echo. I just don't know how to fix a coach. So we're just going to roll with it. For the end of the day, it's a mental health thing for these kids too. I mean, for everything to be shut down, the normalcy of their lives and the schedule of their lives, especially kids, they're not in school when they're supposed to be. They're in front of a computer, in the summer, they really can't do much, even though the weather's beautiful outside. You get into the fall and schools, again, a lot different, sports aren't kicking off right away. Everything gets shifted and moved, and it's just, it's a different time. And for kids to be able to have that, and not miss out on a winter season and being able to at least get games in, whether, they were to your par or not, just for them to get in the gym and for those seniors to really get out there and get a game, get their games in. It probably showed you a lot about your program too, and just in general, maybe some things that you might have to clean up, or at least what you have coming back next year. So
Absolutely.
there's a lot of positive to being able to have, like you said, as many games that you guys were able to. I just had announced that we're having an assistant coaches month in April, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited to have head coaches reach from all over, and I've gotten, just in day one, I've gotten like 7 or 8 emails and DMs already from coaches, which has been great. What's your advice to young assistant coaches out there that are looking to make that climb and become a varsity coach at some point and take over their own program in any sport?
Embed themselves. I really lucked out that the summers, I was every camp, any place I could go to get better, I did. I was really blessed when Coach Barnes was down at Providence. I was down there with that staff because I had a friend who played there in the late 80s, and I got to work their camps. And I got to be around one of the assistants, Coach Chiat, and Dave Gavitt's son, Dan Gavitt, who's now an NBA exec. I was around these quality people that breathed basketball, but you know what they also did? They could talk about their families. They could talk about life, and they weren't crazy. Those people that can't talk beyond their sport. As a young person who wanted to teach, surrounding myself with people who loved the game, had it in right perspective, but were talented. And I was around talent. And I really am a believer that I am the monkey that can see and do a little bit. And I just put myself in an environment. And that's what I would recommend to young assistants. What are you going to offer your program? Are you just going to be like an assistant that can only take a stat? That's not going to help. What part of the practice can you take over for your varsity coach? I love when I can get when my coach Jordan takes over rebounding, when Coach Mahiri takes over really all the little intricacies of our layup drills, when Coach Kirby can take over the defensive shell. What are you going to offer? You know what I mean? And that's what you got to get good at, that something that makes the team better, that you take complete control over, and it fits the system, and the guidance of the head coach. That's what I was lucky to have happened, and that was a springboard for me.
Yeah, and I love it. You know, the big thing I did as an assistant coach that I used to just say all the time was, and I used to tell Serge this when I coached under him for a long time, was I want punt team and I want kickoff team, like special teams wise, because those are two that can make or break it, right? Like if someone returns a kick on you or someone returns a punt on you, you know, it can change the momentum of a game. And I want to be in control of that. Like I want to have the best kickoff team in the league. I want to have the best punt team in the league. If we're going to make a mistake there, let it fall on me as an assistant coach. Like and it was contagious. A lot of coaches were battle for special teams positions when I was there. So I totally get what you're saying. What's your role? How can you help this program? And what can you do to make these players better? And I agree with you, coach. It's great advice. Last but not least, you know, you've been doing it for a long time. You were assistant coach back in even like in the mid 90s. Talk about sacrifice, time that goes into coaching. We talked about 12 months a year, and it's a lot. But, you know, really talk about, you know, the sacrifice that you might make as far as, you know, just family goes, being home, you know, friendships, you know, just being so dedicated to what you do, maybe not going on vacation as much because you're doing camps or coaching other leagues and doing things. I mean, talk about the sacrifice that goes into being a high school coach and running a high school program.
You do need to find the balance. I'm not good at it still. I hate that it's on my mind when I'm at mass. I hate when I'm out of last Friday night, the dinner that I went out with my wife, God bless her. I couldn't keep my mind. I was so exhausted, and I just could barely carry a conversation. And that's not fair to my wife. And I'm trying to get better at it. And you got to kind of try to find a balance, because the sacrifice, like, how can you ask anyone to work hard daily if you don't? And I'm fully aware that in a small community, I might have a cycle of kids who just don't, I want my kids to do a million things, play as many sports as they can. But basketball is different. Basketball is a skill thing. And skills that don't get worked on, they don't stay. I think a lot of people think they stay put. They erode, they deteriorate, they atrophy. That's the word I'd like to use. And that's the part that I feel as though if I don't keep working at it, my community should. So I try to model that. And I just wish my community would work consistently. And that sacrifice has to take place. Nobody should pat you on the back for it. Someone's got to be the leader of it, and someone has to be the model, the work ethic. And it drains you. It does. You know it. And those 2 trips to the hospital, those are my last. And that's what I don't think my community, that's how much we put it on the line. That's how much we put the success of our programs on the line. People may think that's crazy, small town stuff. No, this is the only window of time these guys get to do this. That's why I sacrifice. That's not for me. If I was doing this for me, I would have left a long time ago. It is their only window of time to be a varsity athlete or be in high school. I better do my job. Even if they don't, I better be the one who does. And that element, I don't think people really get. You know what I mean? And I know you know.
Yeah. I think, you know, and I think that when it comes to that, you know, it's what people don't realize is the work that goes in it behind closed doors, right? Like you said, you could leave at any point if you wanted to, but you're there more for the kids. You're there more for about, building a product year after year that you're responsible to have these kids in a 4-year window to prepare them to be basketball players, to prepare them to be young men, like you mentioned. And I think you've done a heck of a job of doing it, Coach. It's amazing to hear what you've done. Like I said, I've kept you here as the last basketball guy on. I had a run of basketball people for about 6 weeks. And I didn't know you. I didn't know you at all, but I looked up your information, and I was just so impressed. So I was really lucky to get you on here today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Anthony, thank you, man. I enjoyed it. It really does help make you think about it and put it into perspective. And believe me though, Anthony, man, I have just as many people that would go, Poirier, that bomb. That's okay. That's okay. If I'm pleasing everybody, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way, unfortunately, sometimes the way the coaching world falls. But hey, before we go, we do a segment called a 2-minute drill. Okay. And I just fire some rapid fire questions about your sport, about your teams, and what you think. I do give each coach a challenge flag. So you do have, a challenge if you want to explain something a little bit further or talk about it. And same thing. If we give an answer, I'm like, hey, I want a little bit more, same exact thing. All right. So I'll start the timer for 2 minutes. And here we go. Who's the toughest coach that you've coached against in the Patriot League for the last 20 years?
That's a great question because there've been really good ones. Wow.
You can name a few.
Do you know, this is weird because he's not here anymore. He's coaching down in Florida. I thought Coach Fisher is one of them. Coach Rogers is one of them. But the guy, it's a great question. Wow. A guy named Paul Hooley. Paul Hooley, when he coached at Pembroke High School, was so difficult to handle. He was always creating mismatches. And it drove me nuts. And I always had to sub based on, he was always, even if we were winning games, he was always making me have to adjust my lineup. And it made me uncomfortable. I hated that. He was good at that.
Yeah.
He was good at that.
Talk about the gym that was the most rocking gym that you hated to go play. And when you guys went there, it was like hostile territory there all the time.
Dedham. Have you ever been in Dedham's?
No, we scrimmaged them a few times,
gross.
but never been inside the school.
I don't know if they've made any changes, but we had to play there that, we had a state tournament game in there that they didn't have one side of the court, and so many people were packed in such a small area. I love the gyms that we play in our league. People, I hate that they love to play in our gyms. We have nice gyms in our league. Yeah. I have to throw in Hingham though. Hingham has these bleachers that they put out underneath your hoop. And the kids that come in there, they're always on that verge of saying something that they shouldn't, but their ADs do a great job not letting it happen, but you're just not comfortable. You're not comfortable. So I have to say ultimately Hingham.
Okay. Awesome. Toughest defensive player that you've ever coached? It could be a few. You could be a few.
Wow. Wow. We had a young man named Nick the Quick. He is now an assistant. He'll love that I'm saying this. He would put his body in front of a truck. He took charges in a way that it was dangerous. And one of he wasn't allowed to shoot in layup lines. He wasn't allowed, but he would come in and he would defend a good player to a point where they couldn't wait for him to get sub back out. And I thought, pound for pound, Nick the Quick Lombardo. He'll love that I said
that. What would you say is more of a style for you? Would you rather have a successful season being very offensive team, or would you rather have a successful season being a very defensive style team?
Oh man, the long run defense. In the long run defense.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
Best win you ever had in your career?
Oh, wow. Um, Best win. Whoa, gosh. There's been some crazy stuff. Um, we had a game in Brockton against a very, very talented Wareham team in 2009 that, and they were great. They were great. And we played almost a perfect game.
Yeah.
And Wareham was really good. And it was just the environment of it. And the year before in that same gym, we made a layup at the last second to beat an undefeated Medfield team. I would have to say either one of those games. It was just because, have you been in Brockton High School?
No,
It,
but I've heard that place is rocking.
it was just out of control. It was just awesome. And those environments were awesome. Those games were really come to mind. Thankfully, we've had a bunch.
Okay. Okay. You survived the 2-minute drill, Coach.
Oh wow, those are
Again,
great.
you were an unbelievable guest. Like I said, I just did my homework on you, and you're right. You're like right about everything that's coaching. I've had a few basketball coaches on a row now that just like get it. They get the whole child, and all of them are educators. And I think that is
Mhm.
just a really important element that sometimes goes unnoticing in coaching. And I'm not saying coaches that are not in education do not do a good job, because there's great coaches out there that aren't teachers, but that whole child mentality sometimes with just a coach who has that education background and understanding that something might have happened, especially where you teach, sometimes where you teach at the school that you coach at, you maybe know what's going on during the day, or some of your staff might teach there and they know that this kid maybe got in trouble in class or had a little trouble with this or a little trouble at home or whatever it is. And you're kind of able to get that information, and being a school teacher and understanding that you see kids like that walk into your class all the time and you're putting out fires left and right. So that's something that's just on the job for you all day, every day, which is great. But again, very honored to have you on here. I'm a huge
Thank you,
fan of
Anthony.
yours, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck down the road.
You as well, man, and good luck with. Love the show. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. All right, so from Beyond Podcast, I'm your host Anthony Petrellis. Till next time, thank you so much.